You'll regret this. I'll own this house. Those were the last words she screamed at me, her face a twisted mask of rage and disbelief. The metal bracelets glinted on her wrists as two very serious-looking postal inspectors led her away from the community picnic gazebo. Her reign was over. It all started a year earlier, with a simple mailbox. It wasn't just any mailbox, and it wasn't just any house. It was my late wife's house. The house she grew up in, the one her father built with his own two hands. After Sarah passed, the silence in our downtown condo became a physical weight. Every corner held a memory, every room echoed with a laugh I'd never hear again. Moving back to her childhood home in the suburbs wasn't just a change of scenery, it was an attempt to hold onto the last tangible piece of her. I'm a logistics and systems engineer. My job is to find the most efficient path for things, to optimize complex systems, to make chaos orderly. I crave logic, predictability, and clear, unbreakable rules. My life with Sarah had been a beautiful, chaotic system that worked perfectly. Without her, the system had crashed. I thought moving here, to this quiet cul-de-sac with its manicured lawns and matching fences, would be a reboot. A place to find a new, quieter kind of order. The neighborhood was governed by a homeowners association, the Oakhaven Estates community. I read the bylaws before I moved in. They were thick as a phone book, full of rules about lawn height, paint colors, and holiday decorations. It seemed excessive, but I figured it was the price of admission for tranquility. I'm a rule follower by nature. Give me a clear set of parameters, and I'll operate within them flawlessly. For the first few months, it was exactly the kind of peace I needed. I spent my days sorting through Sarah's parents' belongings, my evenings on the back porch listening to the crickets, and my weekends doing small repairs. The old wooden mailbox post, the one Sarah's dad had set in the ground 40 years ago, had finally succumbed to rot. It listed to one side like a drunkard, the box itself rusted and dented. One Saturday, I spent the day digging out the old concrete footing, setting a new post, and mounting a brand new, standard issue, black metal mailbox. It was identical to the one before, just new. I stood back, admiring my work. It was a small thing, but it felt good. A tiny piece of order restored. That was my first mistake. The next Monday, I found a crisp white envelope taped to my front door. It wasn't from the post office. It had the Oakhaven Estates logo embossed in a gaudy gold leaf. Inside was a violation notice. Unauthorized alteration of exterior property element, it read. Mail receptacle not in compliance with community aesthetic standards. A fine of $50 is hereby issued. Failure to rectify within 7 days will result in additional fines. At the bottom, a signature was scrawled in an aggressive, looping script, Carol Peterson, HOA president. I was confused more than angry. I looked at my new mailbox, then at my neighbor's, then at the one across the street. They were all the same. Black, metal, standard issue. I called the number on the notice. A sharp, impatient voice answered on the second ring. This is Carol. Hello, this is Michael Vance at 12 Elm Street. I received a notice about my mailbox. Ah, Mr. Vance. The unapproved installation. Her voice was coated in a syrupy condescension that set my teeth on edge. I'm not sure I understand, I said, keeping my own voice level. The new mailbox is the same model as the old one, and it matches every other one on the street. All new installations, she declared, as if reciting scripture, must be submitted to the Architectural Review Committee for prior approval. It's in the bylaws, Section 7, Subsection C, Paragraph 4. You should have read them. I did read them, I said. That section applies to structural changes, like a new fence or a shed. This is a repair. Replacing a broken fixture with an identical 1-inch. The silence on the other end of the line was cold. It is what I say it is, Mr. Vance. You can submit a retroactive application, but the fine stands. And the committee might not approve that particular model. It looks cheap. Cheap. It was a mailbox. It was built to hold mail, not win a beauty pageant. What would you like me to do? I asked, trying to find a logical path through this nonsense. Submit the application. Pay the fine. And wait for our decision. Then she hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling a prickle of annoyance. This wasn't order. This was arbitrary power. It was a broken system. Still, I wanted peace. I filled out the ridiculous 4-page application for a mailbox I'd already installed. I attached photos. I wrote a check for $50 and mailed it to the HOA's post office box. I was trying to be a good neighbor. I was trying to avoid conflict. That was my second mistake. A week later, my application was denied. The reason cited was failure to conform to the historical aesthetic of the original community plan. This was accompanied by another fine, this time for $100, for failure to rectify a cited violation. I was now in violation for having a mailbox, and in violation for not fixing the violation of having the mailbox. It was a perfect bureaucratic loop, a snake eating its own tail. I tried to call her again, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I emailed her, explaining the logical fallacy of her position. The reply was a single sentence: the decision of the committee is final. 2 days later, I came home from work to find it. A concrete planter, the size of a small boulder and twice as ugly, had been placed directly in front of my mailbox. It was so close that the mail carrier couldn't possibly open the door. It was a declaration of war. A note was taped to it, the same aggressive handwriting on the same gaudy letterhead. This designated common area is being beautified as per the Community Landscaping Initiative. Please ensure your property does not encroach. A new fine of $200 has been issued for your non-compliant structure. I just stared at it. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it was almost impressive. She had physically blocked my access to the United States mail. My mail carrier, a friendly woman named Diane, left a note in my front door. Unable to deliver. Mailbox obstructed. Please clear obstruction or mail will be held at the post office. So began my daily pilgrimage to the post office. Every day after work, I'd have to drive 10 minutes, stand in line, and show my identification to retrieve my own mail. It was inconvenient. It was infuriating. But I still thought I could solve it with reason. I went to the next HOA meeting, held in the chilly, sterile community clubhouse. Carol sat at the head of a long table, flanked by a few other board members who looked either terrified of her or bored out of their minds. When the floor opened for homeowner concerns, I stood up. I calmly explained the situation, framing it as a simple misunderstanding. I presented the facts: the old mailbox was broken, the new one was identical, and now it was being illegally obstructed. Carol listened with a smug little smile playing on her lips. "Mr. Vance," she said when I was finished, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We appreciate you bringing your feelings to our attention. However, the rules are the rules. The planter is part of a board-approved beautification project. If your non-compliant mailbox is in the way, then that's your problem to solve." "It's not a non-compliant mailbox," I countered, my voice tight. "And blocking it is a federal crime." A ripple of murmurs went through the dozen or so homeowners in attendance. Carol's smile tightened. "Don't you dare threaten me with your legal nonsense. You are the one in violation here. Your fines are now up to $350. Pay them, remove the offending structure, and submit a compliant proposal, and we can put this all behind us." She was digging her grave deeper, and she didn't even know it. She was creating a system of chaos, and my entire professional life was about designing systems to dismantle chaos. I left that meeting with a cold certainty in my gut. Reason had failed. Appeasement had failed. My quest for peace was over. It was time to optimize her out of my life. The fines kept coming. Every week, a new envelope taped to my door. The amount grew, compounded by late fees and administrative charges she was clearly inventing. The HOA newsletter, a flimsy 2-page affair, now featured a community compliance spotlight section. Guess who was the star? A certain homeowner on Elm Street continues to defy community standards, creating an eyesore and lowering property values for us all, one entry read. She never used my name, but everyone knew. Neighbors started to avoid my gaze. The friendly waves I used to get were replaced with quick glances and hurried retreats indoors. I was being systematically isolated. The turning point, the moment my passive resistance turned into a cold, calculated plan for war, came on a Tuesday. I was at the post office on my daily mail run. The clerk handed me my bundle of letters, and among them was an official-looking envelope from the county probate court. My heart sank. It was a final notice regarding an asset from Sarah's estate. A stock holding we'd forgotten about. The initial notice, which required a response within 30 days, had apparently been in one of the mail bundles I'd been unable to retrieve during the first week of the blockade. I had missed the deadline. Because of Carol's stupid concrete planter, a piece of Sarah's legacy was now tangled in a legal mess that would cost me thousands in lawyer fees to sort out. It wasn't about the money. It was the principle. She had reached into my life and messed with my wife's memory. That was a line that could not be uncrossed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, the probate letter on one side, a stack of HOA violation notices on the other. My grief, which had been a dull, constant ache, sharpened into a diamond-hard point of anger. My mind, the one that designed complex supply chains and streamlined global distribution networks, kicked into gear. This was no longer a neighborhood squabble. It was a logistical problem. The objective: remove the obstruction. Not just the planter, but the source of the obstruction. Carol. The constraints: I had to operate within the bounds of the law, but I could use every single rule, no matter how obscure, to my advantage. The desired outcome: her complete and total removal from power, executed with such precision that it would be a case study in poetic justice. I started my investigation. Phase 1 was information gathering. I spent hours in the county records office, pulling the original deeds for every property in the Oakhaven estates. I cross-referenced them with the HOA's founding charter. I found the first crack in her fortress. The small strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street, where the mailboxes stood, was not HOA common property. It was a municipal utility easement. The HOA had no more legal authority over it than they did over the moon. They had been asserting control over land they didn't own for years. Next, I dove into the United States Postal Service regulations. The Domestic Mail Manual is a document of staggering complexity, a labyrinth of rules and sub-rules that would make a tax attorney weep. To me, it was a beautiful piece of systems engineering. And buried deep within it was everything I needed. It wasn't just illegal to obstruct a mailbox. It was illegal to interfere with the delivery of mail in any way. And the penalties were not trivial fines. They were federal felonies. I needed an ally, someone with specialized knowledge. I found him 3 doors down. Frank was a retiree who spent most of his days tending his rose bushes. I'd exchanged pleasantries with him but never had a real conversation. One evening, I saw him struggling with a sprinkler head and went over to help. We got to talking. Turns out, Frank wasn't just a gardener. He was a retired United States postal inspector. He'd spent 30 years investigating mail fraud, mail theft, and, yes, obstruction of correspondence. When I told him my story, his kindly grandfather face hardened. "Son," he said, his voice low and serious. "You're not dealing with a garden-variety busybody. You're dealing with a federal criminal." Frank became my secret weapon. He confirmed my reading of the municipal easement. He pointed me to the exact statutes Carol was violating. He explained the kind of evidence the Postal Inspection Service would need to open a case. They need a pattern, he explained. They need intent. They need irrefutable proof. Video is best. So, I installed cameras. Tiny, discreet ones. One in the window of my upstairs office, perfectly framed on the mailbox and the planter. Another hidden in a birdhouse I mounted on a tree across the street. They recorded in high definition, 24/7, uploading everything to a secure cloud server. I now had a documented, time-stamped record of every time Diane, the mail carrier, was forced to skip my house. I had a record of Carol occasionally stopping her car to admire her concrete monstrosity, a smug look on her face. But Frank's advice gave me another idea. A bigger one. He had mentioned that the laws were designed to protect the integrity of the mail stream as a whole system. My engineer brain latched onto that. I wasn't just a victim in this system. I could become an active participant. I could use the system itself as my weapon. That was the night I formulated Operation Mailstorm. It was a plan of beautiful, malicious compliance. It was designed not just to prove I was right, but to make Carol's life a living, bureaucratic hell using the very mail she was trying to deny me. The plan had 3 phases. Phase 1, the legal foundation. I created a new business. It was a simple sole proprietorship, which cost me $25 to register with the state. I called it Vance Logistical Solutions. Its official business address. Not my home. I rented the smallest post office box available at the local post office. This was a crucial step. Then, I filed a form with the USPS. It's a standard form that allows a business to designate a commercial mail receiving agent, or CMRA. A CMRA is a third party authorized to receive mail on behalf of a business. I designated my home address, 12 Elm Street, as the official CMRA for Vance Logistical Solutions. This meant that my house was now, legally speaking, a commercial mail handling facility. The final piece of the legal puzzle was the masterstroke. I sent a certified letter to the Oakhaven Estates HOA. In it, I formally offered the services of Vance Logistical Solutions. I proposed that, to ensure the secure and timely delivery of all important HOA correspondence, the HOA should redirect its official mail from its current post office box to its new, secure receiving agent. The agent, of course, was my company. The address was my house. I laid out a professional-looking fee schedule for sorting, holding, and processing their mail. I knew they would reject it. That was the point. Their rejection, which I demanded in writing, was my proof that I had attempted to solve the mail issue professionally. Carol's reply was even better than I'd hoped. It was a masterpiece of sputtering, condescending rage, typed up on her gaudy letterhead. Under no circumstances will the Oakhaven HOA engage in business with a delinquent homeowner in violation of community covenants, she wrote. This is clearly a pathetic and transparent attempt to circumvent your obligations. Cease and desist this harassment immediately. I framed it. Phase 2, rerouting the flow. Now came the fun part. I couldn't legally change the HOA's mailing address myself. But I didn't have to. Many businesses and government agencies have a simple online portal to update your mailing address. They don't always require a password. Sometimes, all you need is the old address and the new one. I started with the low-hanging fruit. The HOA's lawn care service. Their insurance provider. The company that serviced the community pool. One by one, I went to their websites and updated the HOA's mailing address from their post office box to my home address, care of Vance Logistical Solutions. I wasn't breaking any laws. I was a designated mail receiving agent, acting on behalf of a community entity that used my physical street address for its own legal charter. It was a gray area the size of Texas. The mail started to arrive. First, it was just a trickle. A few invoices, some promotional flyers. Diane, my mail carrier, was confused. I explained that I was now handling some mail processing for the HOA. She just shrugged. As long as the address was valid, it was her job to deliver it. I handled every piece of mail with professional care. I logged each item into a spreadsheet, sender, date received, type of mail. Then I placed it in a secure, locked bin in my living room. According to the CMRA regulations I had printed and memorized, I was required to notify the recipient of their mail's arrival. So, for every single letter the HOA received, I sent an email to Carol. Dear Ms. Peterson, each email began. This is to inform you that a piece of mail addressed to the Oakhaven HOA has been received by Vance Logistical Solutions on your behalf. As per our fee schedule, a processing fee of $5 is now due. Mail can be retrieved from our facility at 12 Elm Street during business hours, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 9:15 a.m., upon payment of all outstanding fees. I sent her 3 of those emails the first week. 5 the next. Her response was to tape a new violation to my door. Unauthorized operation of a home-based business. Fine, $500. I sent her a polite email back with a link to the city ordinance on home-based businesses, which allowed for clerical work that didn't increase neighborhood traffic. My 15-minute pickup window, I argued, was far less disruptive than the daily parade of landscaping trucks she hired. She didn't reply. But she also didn't retrieve her mail. The locked bin in my living room started to fill up. The invoice from the pool company. A notice from the HOA's bank. A certified letter from the county tax assessor. Every day, I sent my little email notifications. Every day, the processing fees accumulated. Phase 3, the trap. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist. Her entire personality was based on control. The idea that I was controlling her mail, her information, would be eating her alive. I predicted she would do something stupid. Something physical. So I made it easy for her. I bought a second mailbox, a large, locking one designed for small businesses. I mounted it on a post right next to my own personal, still obstructed mailbox. I put a professional-looking vinyl decal on the side, Vance Logistical Solutions. Authorized HOA mail drop. This was the bait. It was a flagrant, undeniable challenge to her authority, planted right there on the utility easement she thought was her personal fiefdom. It took her less than 24 hours to take the bait. That Saturday morning, my camera system sent an alert to my phone. Motion detected. I watched the live feed as Carol's SUV pulled up. She got out, her face a thundercloud. She marched over to the new mailbox. She grabbed it with both hands and tried to shake it. I had set the post 3 feet deep in high-strength concrete. It didn't budge. She kicked it. She looked around, saw no one was watching, and then did exactly what I hoped she would. She had a key. Not a copy of my key. A master key, one of those sets that postal workers and, apparently, corrupt HOA presidents can get. She opened the box. She reached inside, pulled out a handful of letters, the day's delivery for the HOA, and slammed the door shut. She then marched over to her ugly concrete planter, shoved the mail underneath it, and gave my personal mailbox a final, spiteful kick. She drove away, a triumphant smirk on her face. I sat in my office, watching the recording. A slow smile spread across my own face. Gotcha. She hadn't just obstructed delivery. She hadn't just trespassed. She had used a key to open a mail receptacle that was not hers and remove the mail. That wasn't just a felony. That was the felony jackpot. I saved the video file in triplicate. I backed it up to an external drive, which I placed in my safe deposit box. I sent a copy to Frank. His reply was a single word, beautiful. The trap had been sprung. But I wasn't done. This was just the first piece of the puzzle. I wanted to dismantle her entire house of cards. The next HOA meeting was 2 weeks away. I spent that time escalating Operation Mailstorm. I found the online portals for the HOA's utility companies. Water, electricity for the clubhouse and streetlights. I updated their mailing addresses. The shut-off notices started arriving in my living room bin. The late fees piled up. I continued my daily email notifications to Carol, my tone relentlessly cheerful and professional. The total in outstanding processing fees climbed into the hundreds of dollars. On the day of the HOA meeting, I dressed carefully. I wore a suit and tie. I looked like a man who came to discuss business, not a disgruntled homeowner. I brought a briefcase. Inside was a laptop, a small projector, and a thick binder. The meeting started as usual. Carol droned on about landscaping budgets and pickleball court resurfacing. When she opened the floor for new business, I was the first to stand. Michael Vance, 12 Elm Street, I said, my voice calm and clear. I'd like to discuss the ongoing issue of mail security and the HOA's delinquent accounts. Carol's eyes narrowed. Mr. Vance, you are not recognized. You are not in good standing due to over $2,000 in unpaid fines. According to my records, I said, opening my binder, the HOA has over $500 in unpaid mail processing fees. Perhaps we can call it even. A few people chuckled. Carol's face flushed a dangerous shade of red. This is not the forum for your little games, she snapped. I'm not playing games, Carol. I'm a business owner providing a service you've refused to pay for. As a result, important financial documents, including a delinquency notice from the community's insurance provider, have gone unaddressed. Are the other board members aware that our liability insurance is about to be canceled for non-payment? That got their attention. The board-looking man next to her, the treasurer, sat up straight. What is he talking about, Carol? He's lying, she shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. He's a troublemaker, and he's harassing me. Harassment is a strong word, I said smoothly. I would call it correspondence. Something you seem to have a problem with. In fact, I have evidence of repeated, willful interference with the delivery of the United States mail, which I'm sure the board would be very interested to see. I didn't show the video. Not yet. This was just a probe, a test of her defenses. She reacted exactly as I knew she would. With pure, unrestrained fury. "Get out," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Get out of this meeting. You are fined another $1,000 for disorderly conduct." Security. There was no security. Just a room full of stunned neighbors. I slowly packed my briefcase. "For the record," I said to the room at large, "I have tried to resolve this peacefully. The next step, unfortunately, will have to be a bit more formal." I walked out, leaving a bomb of chaos ticking behind me. I had lost the battle, but the war was going exactly according to plan. She had lost her credibility. Now, I just had to wait for her to lose her freedom. I had hoped my performance at the meeting would make her back off, realize she was outmatched. I underestimated her capacity for vindictive rage. She didn't back off. She escalated to a level that was genuinely insane. The following Monday, 2 police officers showed up at my door. They were responding to an anonymous tip about a domestic disturbance. I lived alone. My only companion was a 17-year-old cat that slept 20 hours a day. I explained this to the officers, who looked embarrassed and quickly left. 2 days later, a van from animal control pulled up. Anonymous tip about a neglected animal. I invited the officer in. She took one look at my ancient, purring cat, asleep on a velvet pillow, and rolled her eyes. "Let me guess," she said. "HOA trouble." Then came the call from my boss. Carol had found my employer online. She had written a long, rambling letter to our Human Resources Department, accusing me of running an illegal side business, harassing my neighbors, and exhibiting unstable behavior. Thankfully, my boss knew me. He called me into his office, showed me the letter, and we both had a good laugh about it before he threw it in the trash. But it was chilling. She wasn't just trying to find me anymore. She was trying to destroy my life. She was attacking my home, my reputation, my livelihood. Any lingering shred of doubt I had about the path I was on evaporated. She needed to be stopped, completely and permanently. My plan was solid, the mail tampering evidence was damning, but Frank, my retired postal inspector friend, suggested I needed something more. "The mail charge will stick," he'd said over coffee. "It's a federal crime. But prosecutors are busy. They might let her plead it down to a misdemeanor. If you want to guarantee she goes away, you need something bigger. Financial crimes. That's what really gets their attention. People like her, it's never just about power. Follow the money." I had suspected it all along. The opaque budgets, the ever-increasing fees, the beautification projects that consisted of a single ugly planter. But I had no way to prove it. The HOA's financial records were a black box, controlled entirely by Carol. And then, I got a gift. It came in the form of a plain brown envelope, left on my doorstep in the middle of the night. No return address. Inside was a USB stick and a single sheet of paper with one sentence typed on it: "She's stealing from us all." I plugged the drive into a secure, air-gapped laptop. It was a treasure trove. Scanned bank statements for the HOA going back 5 years. Invoices from contractors. And a second set of books, a private ledger. It was all there, in black and white. Landscaping contracts with a company that was owned by her brother-in-law, inflated by 40%. Clubhouse repairs that never happened, with checks cashed by a shell corporation that traced back to her own maiden name. Direct transfers from the HOA reserve fund to her personal savings account, disguised as consulting fees. She had embezzled over $100,000. It was methodical, arrogant, and breathtakingly illegal. I didn't know who my anonymous benefactor was, but they had just handed me the kill shot. Now it was time to bring in the professionals. I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the United States Postal Inspection Service. I spoke to an inspector named Martinez. I calmly laid out the story, from the blocked mailbox to the video of the mail theft. I sent him the encrypted video file while we were on the phone. There was a long silence as he watched it. "Well," he finally said, his voice grim. "That's about as clear-cut as it gets. We'll be opening a formal investigation." The second call was to the white-collar crime division of the county district attorney's office. I explained about the embezzlement, the 2 sets of books, the fraudulent invoices. I sent them the contents of the USB drive. The reaction was even faster. They asked me to come in the next day to give a formal statement. The system of justice was starting to turn. The gears were slow, but they were grinding. I met with Inspector Martinez and 2 detectives from the DA's office. We sat in a sterile interview room, and for 3 hours, I walked them through everything. Every fine, every threat, every piece of mail, every line item in the fraudulent ledger. I gave them my logs, my videos, my emails. I was a logistics expert presenting a flawless chain of evidence. They were impressed. "You've done most of our work for us, Mr. Vance," one of the detectives said, shaking his head in disbelief. They told me they had enough to move forward with arrests and search warrants. But I had one last request. "The annual community picnic is in 10 days, I said. "She'll be there, on a stage, acting like the queen of the neighborhood. I want her downfall to be as public as the humiliation she put me through." Martinez exchanged a look with the detectives. It was unorthodox. But after hearing the whole story, they understood. They agreed. They would make their move at the picnic. Justice, I thought, is a dish best served publicly. A few days before the picnic, I found out who my whistleblower was. A young man, probably in his early 20s, knocked on my door. He looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Are you Michael Vance?" he asked. I recognized his face from photos I'd seen on Carol's social media. It was her son, Kevin. "I'm the one who sent you the USB drive," he said, avoiding my eyes. I couldn't watch her do it anymore. She's been like this my whole life. The money, the bullying, it just got worse and worse. She tried to get me to help her hide the bank records. I copied them instead. "You did the right thing," I told him, my voice softer than I expected. He wasn't an antagonist. He was just another one of her victims. "They're arresting her at the picnic," I said. He nodded, a look of profound relief washing over his face. "Good," he whispered. "It's time. It's long past time." The day of the picnic was bright and sunny. The entire neighborhood was out. Families spread blankets on the lawn, kids ran through sprinklers, and the air smelled of grilled hot dogs. It was the picture of suburban harmony, a perfect facade for the drama that was about to unfold. Carol was in her element, standing at a podium in the community gazebo, a microphone in her hand. She was wearing a crisp white pantsuit, looking every bit the benevolent ruler. I saw Inspector Martinez and his partner, dressed in casual clothes, mingling near the barbecue pit. 2 uniformed county officers were discreetly positioned near the park exit. The stage was set. Carol tapped the microphone. "Welcome, everyone, to our wonderful annual get-together," she said, her voice booming across the park. She went through a list of announcements, her voice dripping with the fake cheerfulness I had come to despise. Then, she paused, a cruel smile on her face. "And finally, a little bit of community business. As you know, we've had a problem with a certain resident who refuses to follow our rules and has fallen significantly behind on his financial obligations. I want to assure you all that the board is pursuing aggressive legal action, including placing a lien and foreclosing on the property to protect our shared home values." She was talking about me. She was announcing her intention to take my home, Sarah's home, in front of the entire neighborhood. That was my cue. I had arranged with the men running the sound system, a neighbor who'd also been fined by Carol for having the wrong shade of patio umbrella, to give me a turn at the mic. He saw me approaching and cut Carol's microphone, switching on a second one for me. I stepped up next to the gazebo, the mic in my hand. "Actually, Carol, I think we should talk about financial obligations," I said. My voice was calm, but it carried across the suddenly silent park. Every head turned toward me. Carol's face went from smug to furious in a split second. "What is the meaning of this?" I did not yield the floor. "You're right, you didn't," I said. "But I'm taking it. You see, for the past year, Our HOA president has been fining me because I replaced a broken mailbox. She blocked my mail, causing me to miss critical legal deadlines. She has waged a campaign of harassment against me, filing false police reports and trying to get me fired. A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. He's a liar. Carol shrieked into her dead microphone. But the real issue here isn't my mailbox, I continued, my voice rising. It's about what Carol does when she thinks no one is watching. On cue, a large projection screen that had been set up to show a kids' movie later that evening flickered to life. My friend from the sound booth hit play. The video from my hidden camera filled the screen. The entire neighborhood watched in high definition as Carol Peterson, their HOA president, used a key to illegally open my business mailbox, steal the mail inside, and hide it under her ugly concrete planter. The silence in the park was absolute. No one was eating. No one was talking. They just stared, their mouths hanging open. Carol looked from the screen to me, her face ashen. That's doctored footage. It's a deep fake, she stammered. Is it? I asked. Because Inspector Martinez from the United States Postal Inspection Service seems to think it's real. He's right over there by the grill. You can ask him yourself. I pointed. Martinez gave a little wave. Carol's eyes widened in panic. But wait, I said, turning back to the crowd. There's more. Because this isn't just about mail. It's about money. Your money. The image on the screen changed. It was now a side-by-side comparison of the HOA's official budget and the secret ledger from the USB drive. I used a laser pointer to highlight the discrepancies. Here's an invoice for $10,000 for pool repairs that never happened. And here is the corresponding deposit into a bank account owned by Carol Peterson. I went on, line by line, showing them the landscaping fraud, the fake consulting fees, the direct transfers. I showed them the $100,000 she had stolen from them, from their community, from their children's playground fund. It was a systematic, public unmasking of a tyrant. When I finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, and then the dam of fear and resentment that Carol had built over the years broke. People started shouting. Thief, someone yelled. I knew it, screamed another. Carol was trapped. She looked wildly around, her face a mess of sweat and desperation. Her public image, her power, her entire world was collapsing around her in real time. And then she just snapped. Fine, she screamed, her voice a raw, ragged shriek that silenced the crowd. I did it. I took the money. You people don't deserve it. You're all ungrateful peasants. I built this community. I made it what it is. I deserved a bonus. Her confession, bellowed for all to hear, hung in the air. That's when Inspector Martinez and the other officers started walking toward the gazebo. They moved with a calm, deliberate purpose that was more terrifying than any siren. Carol saw them coming, and her rage turned to pure, animal panic. And you, she shrieked, her finger jabbing at me. This is all your fault. You and your stupid mailbox. I was trying to teach you a lesson. I was trying to protect our standards. Martinez reached the steps of the gazebo. Carol Peterson, he said, his voice quiet but firm. You are under arrest for mail theft, obstruction of correspondence, and bank fraud. 2 uniformed officers moved in behind her. They took her by the arms. She struggled, but it was useless. They turned her around and put her hands behind her back. The sharp, metallic click of the handcuffs echoed in the silent park. It was over. As they led her away, a disgraced queen being frog marched out of her own castle. She turned her head and locked eyes with me. The hatred in them was a physical force. That's when she screamed it. You'll regret this. I'll own this house. It was her last, pathetic, impotent threat. A hollow echo from a queen who had just been deposed. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt quiet. The system was back in balance. The aftermath was swift. The HOA board dissolved in disgrace. An emergency election was held, and a new board was voted in, led by a retired accountant who was horrified by the state of the finances. Their first official act was to issue a formal apology to me and void every fine Carol had ever levied against me. Their second act was to hire a couple of guys with a truck to haul away the ugly concrete planter. I watched them winch it onto the flatbed, a monument to petty tyranny being carted off to the dump. The community began to heal. People started talking to each other again. The cloud of fear and suspicion that Carol had cultivated for years finally lifted. Neighbors started waving to me again. A few even stopped by to thank me, shaking my hand and telling me they'd wanted to stand up to her for years but were too afraid. I just nodded. I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a man who had been pushed too far, a man whose system had been disrupted and who had, in turn, disrupted the disruptor. Carol's fate was a matter of public record. Faced with the mountain of evidence, she pleaded guilty. She was convicted on multiple federal and state charges. The judge was not lenient. She was sentenced to 5 years in a federal penitentiary. The court ordered her to pay full restitution to the HOA, forcing the sale of her oversized house and all her assets. She lost everything. Her home, her money, her reputation, and her freedom. Poetic justice. A few weeks after the sentencing, I was sitting on my back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Frank, my retired postal inspector friend, came over with 2 cold beers. He handed one to me and sat down in the chair next to mine. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just listening to the crickets start their evening song. "You know," he said finally, taking a sip of his beer. "In all my years on the job, I never saw a case quite like this one. You didn't just report a crime. You engineered a solution." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. "I'm a logistics guy, Frank. I just identified an inefficiency in the system and rerouted it." He chuckled. "Well, here's to efficiency." He raised his bottle. "And to quiet neighborhoods." I clinked my bottle against his. "And to perfectly compliant mailboxes." The next morning, I walked out to get the paper. The sun was warm on my face. Diane, the mail carrier, pulled up in her little truck. She smiled and waved. She opened my mailbox, my perfectly legal, aesthetically pleasing, completely unobstructed mailbox, and slid the mail inside with a satisfying thud. There were no threatening letters. No ridiculous fines. Just a few bills, a magazine, and a postcard from a friend. It was normal. It was boring. It was peaceful. I had come to this house seeking order after the chaos of loss. I'd found a different kind of chaos, a petty tyranny that had tried to consume me. But by applying logic, patience, and a deep understanding of the rules, I had restored the system. I had finally found my peace, right here in Sarah's house. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that she would have been proud. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It wasn't the sound of absence. It was the sound of peace.